All right, welcome to the AdaptX podcast, where we have conversations with individuals building accessible businesses, advocating for inclusion, or excelling in adaptive sports. Our intention is never to speak on behalf of those with disabilities, but to provide a platform to share their voice and amplify their ideas for a more inclusive and accessible world. Today, I'm joined by Anna McKeown, the Executive Director of Dreamfar, an organization that has served over 1,000 students from Greater Boston, and in 2025 will serve 75 mentees from 6 partner school sites. Dreamfar welcomes teens with diverse backgrounds and abilities to take part in a program that combines mentorship and distance running as a pathway to improve their physical and mental fitness, build community, and develop self-efficacy. Anna, thanks for joining me this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So Dreamfar has existed since 2008,
thereabouts, it seems like. So this is our 17th season.
And what was your motivation behind the organization?
Full transparency, I did not start Dreamfar. Jamie Chaloff is the originator of the program. She's a special educator from Newton South High School, and she stepped away in 2019, and I stepped in 2022 as the program director, and have become the executive director since. My initial motivation for getting involved with Dreamfar was that during COVID, the group was very small. Dreamfar operated during COVID, which I think is really interesting. When other sports could not, Dreamfar continued to operate because we could be outside, frankly. And I had a teacher come to me from one of our partner schools and say, "Hey, you've run a lot of marathons. We can't take as many kids as we want to this year. And we have several students at one school who would like to learn to run. Will you teach them?" And I taught them how to run around a track. They were, at that time, kids weren't really in schools, so only a certain population of students were in schools in the fall of 2020. So as you can imagine, a school like Newton North that has over 2,000 kids only had 50, and I had 3 of them. And we learned to run. We learned to do some basic strength activities like a modified push-up. We ran around the indoor track, which was an amazing resource to have. And although 2 of the student mentees did not continue beyond that season, one of them ran their first 5K at the Newton South 5K, an inaugural event. And I ran with him as his mentor, as one-to-one. And his dad also trailed behind us as what I would call now like a fading support. The following year, that same student came back and with his dad as his one-to-one, was able to run the Newport Half Marathon. And so seeing our student mentees of so many backgrounds and abilities just have the opportunity to engage with kids in different ways and find strength in sort of a unique area that maybe they had never considered as a child or even as a teenager. Seeing them excel and see their parents celebrate that is really, really, it's what we call sort of the secret sauce of the industry. Like, it brings you back. It's hard and it's worth it. And you see the transformation and you see the support from the families and their teachers, and you go back and do it again. And so no matter how hard it is or how long it takes, we come back as mentors, but the kids come back. And I think that speaks for itself. That's like 90% of our eligible students return for a subsequent season. The biggest complaint we have is, I wish I had found this program sooner.
It's a good complaint to have. Is there a curriculum that you follow or some sort of supplementary piece beyond just the running component?
Yeah, so we do have a certified coach, Coach Laura Moniz. She's a Somerville resident, and she comes and actually she puts together our entire program from basically like what we do for running safety from like the very beginning. I've never gone running before in my life parts, to carry a phone. How do we carry a phone? Not in our hands, as well as nutrition, hydration, how to dress. Like, tomorrow's going to be 5 or 6 degrees in the morning. A lot of our kids don't know what to wear. And the other piece is, for some of our mentees, the stuff that you or I might typically put on is a no-go because of sensory issues, because they get hot really fast, because gloves aren't a thing that they want to wear. We have to be really thoughtful about how we present all of that information so that everyone does feel like they're part of it, and we're not making a special accommodation just for, this one or that one. This is information for everyone, and everyone can benefit from it.
Yeah.
We also have, this year we received a grant from the Finish Strong Foundation to bring in a recreational inclusion specialist, Lisa Drennan from Merge Consulting. And I had worked with her previously in a different area and brought her in to work with our mentors, because I think there are a lot of assumptions about what inclusion sports are. And she was able to really nuance what we did and how we could do it better, while also exposing everyone to some real baseline strategies so that everyone was re-entering the season on a level playing field. Certainly inclusion, and in terms of distance running and recreation, is different from inclusion in school. The thing that comes to mind is when we have a student who has a one-to-one in school, but when they go running, maybe they don't need a one-to-one. But because we're student mentee focused, we're going to ask that mentee, is this something you want? Maybe your parents requested it. How do you feel about it? Do you want to have someone just in case? Or should we work with the parent to have a fading support or someone trailing on the off chance that support is needed? How do we put this together so that there's both independence and structure that allows that young person to grow into whomever they want to be?
Yeah, I would imagine that autonomy and the independence is pretty empowering for the athletes and something that they probably really cherish. How do you go about setting goals with them? Like you mentioned, a participant who ran his first 5K and then the next year a half marathon. How do you take the students from where they're currently at to where they want to go?
Yeah, so everyone starts, it doesn't matter if you have run a full marathon the season before, we all start the beginning of the season in the same place. And it's often a quarter mile. Maybe it's around the block, maybe it's around the track, but it's a very incremental program that starts very small. And then right around mid-December, the mentees are able to choose what they have in mind for their end of season event. And the path generally continues the same until, actually in this season, it's this weekend, and the paths diverge. And we break up into small groups we call families, and they're staffed with sort of mentors and mentees in a balance, depending on what the needs are of each specific group. Setting goals in that way, we have to be flexible. We know that things are going to happen. So we have to be willing to, like I said before, create a structure that also has some ability to be fluid. Kids get sick. I have a kid with COVID right now. How do we still try to have them meet their goal? We say, take care of your health first. You can't come out and run 10 miles this weekend after having COVID for a week, but maybe you can go for a walk tomorrow. Maybe we're going to rebuild individually so that you can still pursue your goals. And if it doesn't come together by early March, then maybe we shift that goal so that you're still continuing to see the program through, but that it's balancing your health and wellness as much as, your desire to participate in the program. It's definitely a balancing act. And with 75 kids, there are a lot of changes.
Yeah.
And we also have, to be fair, we used to only run a marathon. 2 years ago, we changed it so Dreamfar could be more accessible. And now kids can choose a half marathon as their end of season event. They can also choose to stop the program in the middle of March after the New Bedford half, because maybe they have something else that's coming up, and they can't participate through the end of the season. And this year we've determined that to serve some of our athletes best, we also need to include a distinct 5K program so that everyone can enter and feel like they're succeeding in something that they've never tried before. So
when does the season end? I know you had mentioned it culminating with Newport. Does it go through the spring or?
Yeah, so the traditional end of the season is in April with Newport and previously Providence. This season, we are going to extend our season through the Waltham 5K. It's the Waltham Education Fund 5K. We serve Waltham as a program, and we have a lot of new athletes there who wouldn't otherwise have had access to sports for a whole number of reasons. So this is our way of supporting our newer program and also allowing them to feel like they're part of something. They have our support, and they have all of us out there taking part in an event with them. And I think that's the community piece that's so essential to Dreamfar.
Do the race directors at New Bedford or Newport provide any kind of unique support for you? Do they comp entry fees, or do you guys fundraise to pay those things for the participants?
Dreamfar is totally, we're fully funded by fundraising, donations, and grants. We are not funded by any city or town. It's like me out there running the Boston Marathon, shaking people down for money. But we do get some race fees comped. We volunteer at the Newport. We're going to be volunteering at Newport the day before doing bib distribution. So 15 of us will be there all day on some rotating schedule, and they'll help to cover some of our race fees. In New Bedford last year, they comped some of our race fees, but also were able to make a donation to our organization. And what was I going to say?
Yeah, that's the gist of what I was curious with. Like, we organize road races, and I'm always curious how we can best support the charity partners and the organizations that we work with. And some request that it's comped fees. Some people are just grateful that we make the proactive step to reaching out to them and inviting them. I think that's one thing. Like, races can be a lot more inclusive and diverse simply by inviting people to participate. I know for Jacob and I, as a wheelchair duo, like, when a race wants us to be there and they make the necessary accommodations and stuff, it feels a lot more genuine than if we just show up to a race and hope that we'll be met with a positive response. So I think improving in the inclusivity of road races is a big priority of ours over the next couple of years.
The one thing that Newport has done and Providence did previously, though it is transparently, road races owns both of those events. We have an early start. So our full marathon runners can start a full hour earlier than the actual race starting, and their time is official. They do have to finish within 7 hours, but it adds a layer of simplicity for our mentees who would really like to pursue the full marathon, but know that they may need to walk for a period of it, or that their running pace is in the range that's going to require that entire time. And that is a real generous opportunity. That's not possible at every race. So.
Right. Yeah. Where do you recruit volunteers and participants from?
So our volunteer mentors, they keep signing up. I will say that's an interesting thing. We do have a good group, core group of mentors that have been with us for 5 or more years. Often the mentors will share with a colleague or a friend that they do this thing, and gets them out on a Saturday morning. It gets them out with other people, and that's a piece of the puzzle that they feel like is missing from their life. The fact that they get to kind of just go for a run on a Saturday morning in a structured environment feels good and reliable. We also recruit mentors from our partner site schools. So that is, those partner site schools are in alphabetical order: Brookline High, Needham, Newton North, Newton South, Waltham High School, and Wellesley. And it's really a word of mouth mentor campaign. People tell each other that we do this thing, and we do provide our school site mentors with all of their race fees comped for the year. So it's a small amount of money that we cover, but it is meaningful. And we are able to also provide a small stipend for those people because they are giving up 30 weeks of their life after school, and often Saturdays too, to volunteer to make this a reality. That consistency for our mentors to be available both after school and on Saturdays is a really nice tie-in between school life for our kids and sort of the independence of Saturday and what's next. I think it can be scary to walk into a room where you don't know anyone, but if you see that one person you recognize, the stress level drops off significantly.
Yeah. So does the program involve people running after school every day?
Yeah. They run 3 days a week after school with school site mentors. Some of them are not educators. Some of them are community members out in Wellesley. That's how the program works. Susan Mix is a fabulous athlete, and she volunteers her time at Wellesley High 3 days a week. I join her 1 or 2 days a week, and the program's grown. It's been great. I think having that consistency has been crucial to growing the program from only a handful of kids to now 12.
Yeah.
So that's been a really solid piece of the puzzle and atypical for our structure, I'd say. Our mentees, they just tell each other. So it's, when we came out of COVID, we had 25 or 30 kids. They came back. They told a friend. And it's just grown. So like at Newton North, for example, we had 12 kids my first year. Now we have 27. And that's how it is. And I think that the challenge is they're in high school. So once they graduate, that group sort of has to regenerate. So like any sports team in a high school environment, you're constantly looking like, how do I recruit the next group of kids? So we do club fairs, and we have school site leaders. So, young people are at club fairs and telling each other about their experience. I think that's been really positive.
Is there a reason why they would participate in Dreamfar instead of run cross country or indoor track or outdoor track?
Yes. And I want to say, in full transparency, 2 of our school sites also have unified track programs. So why do they choose Dreamfar over cross country or unified if those are other options? The feedback we get is cross country is really, really competitive. You have to come in the fall season having run all summer. And for some of our mentees, that's not a reasonable expectation. That may require that they have someone with them for doing all of that training because they have a disability that would require someone to be with them for safety. Track is, again, its own different sport. It's in the winter, it's short distances, it's 5 days a week. It's, giving up February and December vacations. So we like to think that Dreamfar is a little more flexible in its structure. We have no expectation that you have ever run before or done any sort of racing or even have shoes, frankly. We provide our program at no cost. So that's a barrier for some kids in high schools. So we want to be upfront about making sure that everyone who wants to take a chance on themselves and grow in this way has the opportunity to. And so that's one of the choices that some of our students make because the program is free. We periodically have to buy outerwear and sneakers for our mentees because they wouldn't have access to them otherwise. There are families in our groups that have trouble putting food on the table. So we want to make sure that they're getting what they need through sport, and also feeding back to those school site mentors and saying, listen, so-and-so said food's a little scarce right now. Like, what can you do at school to make sure that they're getting what they need so that they can continue with this program and feel successful? Because sometimes high school's tough.
For many reasons. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But
Are there are there programs like Dreamfar in other states, or do you hope to see Dreamfar expand outside of the greater Boston area? We are grateful for the support of our first show sponsor. Resolution Fitness offers leading brand health club equipment and accessories for residential and commercial use. In addition to traditional exercise equipment, they specialize in adaptive fitness products and wheelchair accessible machines. If you're interested in outfitting your fitness facility or home gym to be more accessible, visit www.resolutionfitness.ca or the link in the show notes below.
So it's my understanding that Dreamfar was sort of founded on the model that Students Run LA is founded on, and that, you know, no matter what your background is, we will give you what you need to take those steps, and we'll provide you with coaching and training and free race entries. We do it a little bit differently because we provide an opportunity for our mentees to request a one-to-one if they need it to support them through the program. In conversation with Students Run Philly Style, which is another program that serves roughly 1,000 students a year, they don't have anything like that. So this is I think of all of the programs out there, I think even though we're considerably smaller, what we do is also very different because we do have a very inclusive environment. And that's not to say that those other programs aren't amazing. It's just that because we're smaller, we have the opportunity to do things a little bit differently. And I think that Jamie's founding of the organization was really positioned around supporting kids who didn't have access to sports, and this was a way that they could. And so we continue to have that as one of our pillars, that, you know, inclusion is a facet of what we do because it's valuable for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a specific story or memory that kind of stands out, maybe a specific student or an event that you guys participated in?
Oh, gosh. You know, there are a lot, honestly. One of the, as I mentioned, I'm not sure if this was a part of our previous discussion or this morning, but certainly coming out of COVID and having that one student learn to run and then eventually participate in a 5K and then complete a half marathon a year later was total, like from my end, wow. How do you replicate that experience? And although every single time I run an event with a student, and I think any mentor you talk with would have the same experience, it's different, but it's just as equally as unique and special because each mentee brings something different into the mix. They bring some different experience or, story that makes you, sort of convinces you that you're doing this for all the right reasons. Even though running the distance is hard, they've convinced you that, like, you're going to just sign up again and do this again the next year. One of the other really, I think, amazing experiences I had, and I've done it twice, and I wish it was again this year, but so be it. The last 2 years, I was able to run the Boston Marathon with high school seniors, and they raised money in 1 year, they raised money for Dreamfar to give back. They had been a member of the program for 4 years, and we're 18, and we're able to get a bib, and they raised almost $10,000 for us, which was just amazing coming out of COVID. Money's tight. And then last year I ran with their sibling, which was super cool. And she raised money for the Joseph Tierney Center in South Boston, a low-income community center, and she raised almost $8,000 in running the Boston Marathon. I think that there's a piece of what they've done that really satisfies this deep need to give back, and I think that's a piece of the community building aspect that, like, we haven't really uncovered as an organization. I think our mentees get so much from the program that when given the opportunity to improve some other part of the world, pardon the expression, but like they run to it. I can't think of too many high school kids who, in addition to training for a marathon in their senior year, are willing to register for the Boston Marathon and fundraise almost $10,000. Like that in and of itself speaks volumes about who they are and what they believe in. And that they'd be willing to do it for kids that they've never met is astounding to me. So I think that those are really, really special moments for me. Yeah.
And I mean, you mentioned how important it is to the mentees, and obviously the moments that stand out to you. But for me, like pushing a chair in the races provides, I don't know, it offers something that running by yourself doesn't. I really have no intention to race without Jacob. I don't know, just the duo running and giving someone else the opportunity to be out there makes running a lot more important than just a solo endeavor chasing after some specific time. So I'm sure it's essential to the mentee's life, but I'm sure, and as you alluded to, the mentors keep coming back. I'm sure they recognize that value in what they're providing by supporting the students.
Yeah, I think there's a sense of, we talk about running being a place where people feel like they belong no matter what. And just a unique community that tends to be welcoming and supportive. And I think the piece of what Dreamfar does, but all run clubs I think do, as long as they're positioned in the right way, is that you discover that you're part of something that's bigger than you. And I think that's sometimes hard for kids to see, because it's easy to look at your phone or, divert your attention to something else. But when you are out there and it's just you and the mentees, and you're singing or you're dancing or you're dressed up for the superhero, it's about that shared connection and that experience that you are having in that moment. And that can't be found anywhere else. And I think that's the bigger than me moment, is they recognize that this is a unique opportunity and they're maybe not experiencing that anywhere else.
Absolutely, yeah. What are some of the primary barriers that people with different abilities face in getting involved with endurance sports? You alluded to some of the gear requirements and maybe the sensory components of various pieces of apparel, but what are some of the other logistical, transportation, socioeconomic barriers that people face?
So one of the things that comes up to us is that some of our mentees have trouble getting to our venue for our Saturday practices. It's something that we're really cognizant of, and we're looking at ways to sort of structure that for the future so that it can be more accessible to kids of from every school site. That is that is the biggest challenge, is how do you get a kid from Waltham to Newton Center on a Saturday morning when there's no train or bus, or maybe the family doesn't have a vehicle? Like, those are real challenges for kids. So we're thinking about how to solve that for the future. And maybe it is, beyond carpooling, because if a couple families don't have a vehicle, you can't carpool. So that's one of the things that we're looking at. The other thing that comes to mind when I think about barriers for participation, I think there is a little bit of a mindset within school systems that if you have a disability, you should join unified sport.
Track, yeah.
Yeah. And that's a great opportunity, but it's a season, and it is a different structure altogether. There are specific events. There's not necessarily mentorship. It is part of the school system, so there are a lot of very structured supports. At Dreamfar, we have supports, but they are based on what the family needs or wants and what the student mentee feels that they need. So we're balancing that, and we aren't bound by special education law, because we are a part, we are a separate nonprofit. So it does take on we do have a different approach to it. We want to support everyone who comes to the program. And we also know that we can't serve everyone who comes through the door, although we want to. We're going to try to support, everyone. That's one of the reasons we brought in a recreational inclusion specialist this past year, was to get a better understanding of like what we could be doing to better include everyone who wanted to participate and how that could look. I think the other barrier that comes to mind is sometimes our families want to feel like their child needs more support. And the feedback that we get when we're out running is, when I run, I feel free. Like there's nothing else tagged onto them. They're just out for a run like everybody else. And so our one-to-one supports are actually within the structure of a larger group of runners, mentors and mentees, so that support is a little bit more invisible. It doesn't feel like, for example, when I had a student in a middle school a few years ago, I was this one-to-one cross-country aide. That is a very different structure than we're going for a run as a group. And that student is now a student mentee with us and wanted to run the marathon this year. Like that's the kind of individual growth that you can see in a young person when they're given feeding supports over a long period of time, so that they can develop that I can do it mentality. And we know they can do it because they show up, they put in the work. They are socializing with kids, and they feel and look like a different kid at the end of the run.
Yeah. You kind of referenced some of the limiting beliefs that parents might have regarding their child. Is the program ever met with any resistance from parents who think like, oh, so-and-so can't do a half, or so-and-so can't do the full marathon? Is there any degree of trying to convince the parents of what their child is capable of?
I think one of the unique parts of it is, we are dealing with minors. So when parents step in, we have to adhere to their requests. I mean, at the end of the day, they're signing on the line saying we'll do what they ask. And as the person who does all the signing on the line, I take that pretty seriously. I will say that there have been a few requests over the past few years that parents say, like, my child is not ready to run the full marathon. And we accept that. And we also talk with those families along the way to let them know that, the half marathon is great this year. But if your child becomes a senior in the program, would you be willing to consider that they've done all of this training for several years and then they're 18? They can make these decisions independently. And when the parents see that they've crossed their first finish line at the New Bedford half, and they're just like overjoyed by that moment, they take a little bit of a step back and they say, I didn't expect this for my child. And I think that is a really cool moment to watch, because they've probably been presented with lots of limitations over time. And this is the first time they've seen just total success and total joy over something that is not really, like their child has chosen to take part in this and they've seen it through. And now they're doing something that they themselves as adults wouldn't have considered doing. I think that speaks volumes about the tenacity of the kids who show up to Dreamfar.
Yeah. You recently transitioned from program director to executive director. Do you have specific goals for the next year or two as to how you would like to grow the program or what direction you want to take it in?
Sure. I mean, it's definitely an all hands on deck all the time kind of role. And I work in a school full time too. So it's every week is crazy. But one of the things we want to do is increase our speaker series to include more diverse representative speakers from all areas of, the sort of running universe. And that's something that we've just developed. It went really well last year. We're adding speakers this year. And to really keep in mind that it's like a holistic approach to wellness over a lifetime. The other thing that we are working on developing, as I mentioned before, is a 5K program, so that more young people have opportunities to get into the sport of distance running in a way that feels comfortable to them, but also doesn't take 30 weeks. The model that comes to mind is Bulldogs Running Club. They are working with a couple schools in Boston to bring 5Ks to schools that actually don't even have courts. So that's one of the things that I'm looking at when I think about how do we develop our program to serve more young people. Well, it's accessibility. What structures can we build that will make our program more accessible and develop young people over the life of their time in high school? So maybe they start with a 5K and they do it in the spring for 6 or 8 weeks, which makes them think maybe they'd like to try the half next year or do the 5K again. There is no requirement that you do the half marathon right now and then you go to the full marathon. We have kids who run the half marathon this is their 3rd year doing it. I think if that is how you find lifetime sport for a lifetime, then that's what we want to be behind 100% all the time. Whatever is accessible to you and approachable to you is what's right for us too.
Absolutely. If people want to get involved with Dreamfar or support you in any way, kind of how about should they go about doing so?
Sure. We do have a website, dreamfarhsm.org. We are on social media. We're on Instagram. We are on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. And we are pretty easy to find because we're usually wearing orange. We also, if you really want to find us and you're a runner, we're out on Com Ave every Saturday from November through April. And we are happily supported by, many of the programs that fall under charity teams. We are very fortunate to be able to resource share with them a little bit. They're just an amazing sort of umbrella, and we're able to share with them, which has been really special. So that's been a really awesome thing for us. But the other thing, so we do have a volunteer form on our website, and to contact us, feel free to reach out and we will follow up. I'm kind of a one-man army here, but we managed to get it done.
And you have 2 bibs for Boston, one for yourself and then one other participant, so people could find those fundraising pages to learn more about the cause.
Yeah, we have 2 people running the Boston Marathon, myself and a young woman from Walpole who brought her own bib and is fundraising for us, which is tremendous. We also have 5 bibs that are going up for the Falmouth Road Race. So we will be offering those to the community at large, starting in early February once we get through that entire process. But those are also fundraising opportunities at a lower price tag, if you will.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the biggest barriers for Boston, I guess, is that fundraising requirement in addition to completing the race. But Anna, well, it was a pleasure to talk. I think I mentioned before the episode, but I've been aware of Dreamfar since I crossed paths with some people at the Providence Marathon several years back, and just through following you on LinkedIn and such. So really appreciate what the program does, obviously respect and appreciate the inclusive nature of it as it's well aligned with a lot of the work that we do. So thank you for the work that you do and all the responsibility that you take on, so more people have the opportunity to run.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure speaking with you, and maybe we can have you come in and speak with us someday.
Yeah, I would love to whenever. So, thank you for listening to the AdaptX podcast. Our effort to amplify the ideas of our guests and create more inclusive and accessible industries is futile unless these episodes reach a larger audience. If you enjoyed our discussion today, please leave us a rating or a review on whichever platform you use. And if you would like to learn more about AdaptX, the course that we teach to health and fitness professionals and the projects that our organization is working on, you can subscribe to our newsletter through our website, www.adaptx.org. Until next Monday.